Okay, here's our first math word problem of the day. We're actually going to go through two today because I have a whole week's worth here, and then Friday is on its own. It's a timesheet, and I really like that one too. So we're going to go through Monday and Tuesday today, and then the rest of the week we'll just do one at a time a day. Okay, so how I'm going to do this normally is, I still haven't done this yet today, but I can upload the week's worth of word problems to the Google Drive. And remember, this isn't something you have to do, it's just for fun practice. Because it's really good to be able to do word problems, because remember, you need to be ready for fourth grade, and there's lots of word problems, even in third. So fourth is going to be even more. And I've taught fifth grade, and I know that fifth grade has lots of word problems. So Monday's problem is right here. I will let you quick pause and look at the question. Okay, so it says, Roy Rabbit spent all day Monday painting stripes on approximately, that's a funky word, I'm going to circle that one, approximately 560 eggs. Okay, so I'm going to box the word approximately. I'm going to circle 560. Okay, then it says, what is the greatest and least amount of eggs he could have painted stripes on? Then explain your answers. So greatest and least amount of eggs he could have painted stripes on. And explain your answers. Okay, so when the word approximately is there, we know that that means that they were rounding. Okay, so 560, think of what number that's closest to. Is it close? Is it rounded to the nearest 100? Is it rounded to the nearest 10? Okay, think of those things before you choose your greatest and least amount of eggs here. Okay, take a pause. I'm going to show this up. Think about it one more time. Pause and think about it, and you can solve it. Okay, here's what I think. Since it says approximately 560 eggs, I know they're rounding to the nearest 10 because that's the next place with the full digit. Okay, it can't be to the nearest hundreds, otherwise 560 would be rounded to 600. Okay, when you're rounding to the nearest 100, the tens place and the zeros place both have zero placeholders because you're rounding to the nearest 100. This is the nearest 10 because only the ones place has a zero placeholder. So if I were to round to 560, see, I have a whiteboard here. I do, perfect. Okay, where's my markers? There's one, purple today. Okay, so if I were to round to 560, I know I'm going to the nearest 10, right? So what numbers before 560 would round up to that, and then after 560 would round back down to that? Okay, well, I'm just going to work backwards here to go down first. So I know 559 would round to 560 because 9 makes that 10 bump up. I know 558 would round that 5 back up. And then 557, same thing. 556, because all of these. And then 555 would also round up to 560. Okay, do you remember our rules? If it's 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, give it a rest. Okay, so we include 555, 556, 557, 558, and 559 all round to 560 is the nearest 10. Okay, now if I want to know what rounds down, I'm going to draw a line. So I'm going to say less than, and these are greater than, but they still round down. Okay, so 560. I know 561, that's 4 or less, so we give it a rest, leave it at 560. 562, same thing. 563 and 564. Why can't I put 565? If I were to make 565, see how 555 down here, that would round up to the next 10, so that would be 570. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers that round to 560 as the nearest 10 from rounding down, and then I have 5 numbers that round up to the next 10, which is 560. Okay, remember, we're rounding to the nearest 10, so you look at the ones place, and that's where you decide whether or not the 10 stays where it is. So think if you had 10, if you're rounding to the nearest 10 cents, it's the same thing, okay? So if you had 5 pennies, that's closer to having a whole dime than if you just have 3 pennies, if that makes sense. I always like to think of rounding with money. So that would be the answer to this question. So now I'm going to organize it a little nicer. Okay, so the greatest and least amount of eggs he could have. So the greatest amount of eggs he could have, I'm going to look at this again. Greatest number would be 564, because if he had 565 eggs, he would have approximately had 570, okay? And then the least amount of eggs he could have had is, where are we going here? 555. Because if he would have had 554 eggs or less, it would have rounded down to 550. Okay, so I'm gonna write that explanation out quick. So I'm gonna say, I think, his name is Roy Rabbit. I think Roy was rounding to the nearest 10. And these were the least and greatest in the list I came up with. Okay, the explanation doesn't have to be exactly that, but if it's something sort of close, that counts. Okay, so here's Monday. Okay, so the greatest amount of eggs he could have had was 564, and the least amount of eggs he could have had was 555, because approximately tells us that he is rounding. Okay, Tuesday's going to be an easy one. We'll move on here. So there's your Tuesday. You can pause and look in that one. Okay, it says, Roxy Rabbit picked 63 carrots to use to make veggie cakes. The recipe calls for 9 carrots per cake. Per tells me I'm going to divide, right? How many cakes can she bake? Write the equation and solve. Okay, I'll let you look at this one more time. We've been doing these all year, so this one should be very easy. Okay. Hope you paused and solved it, because now I'm going to solve it and you can check your work. Okay, so I have 63 carrots, and I know that 9 carrots go in each cake. So I'm going to say 63 divided by 9. Okay, I know that 9 times 7 is 63, so 63 divided by 9 equals 7. And my label here is cakes, because it says how many cakes can she bake. So I'm not going to use these little lines down here. If you want to, you totally can, but I just wrote the whole thing right up here. It's pretty simple. If you needed to draw a model to solve, that's fine. But those are our 2 word problems of the day. So we'll keep up just one a day the rest of the week.